Hey guys, welcome back to the show, to the channel, I guess, where we look at the truth of your psychology, figure out what's really going on. There's a lot of people out there, especially on YouTube, talking about mindset. You need the right mindset. And then there's a smaller portion of people in the psychology self-help industry, this multi-billion-dollar industry conglomerate that's run by academia mostly. And if it's not explicitly run by academia, then it is mostly influenced by academia. That's the mindset. That is all the influence of cognitive behavioral therapy. So we have CBT on the one hand, that makes your problem very clear, although it doesn't go that deep. And then on the other hand, we have the psychodynamic aspect of the field, which is much smaller, but they don't help either, because while they do get to the foundational, fundamentally what your problem is, it's not that clear. It's more vague. So what we need is a way to really conceptualize your problem, not the surface, not just how the problem presents as a thought, emotion, or behavior, but what causes that thought, what causes that emotion, what causes that behavior. Get really clear about that, bring enough awareness to what that fundamental issue is, work on that, and then whatever disruptive thought, emotion, or behavior you have more or less takes care of itself with enough awareness. I mean, that's in a sense, the definition of awareness. If you were aware of what the problem was, then you would simply change it. And then maybe you would read a mindset self-help book. I mean, you don't even need that. Just go to some Mindset Bros Twitter account and you'll be able to change the issue. But if you try to change it and you can't, if you want to make a decision that you don't make, or you can't stop making decisions that you want to stop making, you go to change that decision and it doesn't work, or maybe if it works, it only works for a couple days or a week at most, or as long as it's inconsistent, or even if it's painful. If it's even a painful decision, you have to white knuckle your way through it, then it's an unconscious issue. We've got to figure out exactly what's going on in your unconscious. And then the issue takes care of itself. How do we do that? Well, we first define exactly what emotions are, and through this definition of what emotions are and how they work, how they present, how they manifest, I guess that's a big Gen Z word, how they manifest in different ways in your life. Then we can, once we understand that, then we can talk through them, bring awareness to our emotions, and emotions are ultimately the foundation of our behavior. Today we're going to talk about a tweet that I made a couple weeks ago, and I got some great responses to it. Seems to be, well, maybe not confusion, misunderstanding, and I think people get what I'm going to say here. People understand exactly what I'm going to say. Nothing I'm going to say here is that new, but I think it's something that is just outside or just on the edge of our cultural consciousness, right? There's that. Sometimes it's a fine line. Sometimes it's more of a bigger gray area, the line between your conscious, what you're aware of, and your unconscious, what you're unaware of. And I think this is maybe more of a gray area, bigger, not so razor sharp line between these two. So let's talk about this, and in talking about this one specific issue, let's shed more light on how our psychology works so we can ultimately manage it, so we can use it for our own ends as opposed to it using us for its own ends. So the tweet that I made is, I consider it unethical to purposely make somebody feel better about themselves. Unpopular opinion, that meme. I consider it unethical to purposely make someone feel better about themselves. I got some responses to this that were along the lines of, oh, you're just being controversial. I kind of get what you're saying, but you're saying it in a controversial way. Is it really unethical? Yeah, I actually think it is unethical to purposefully make someone feel better about themselves. I think there's a fundamental misconception here about not only what it takes to form a healthy relationship, but what it takes for people to change. And I think these two things that we ultimately get incorrect here in this thing that we call American culture, or I would even broaden it out to Western culture, these two, it's not a misunderstanding so much, but just a lack of clarity about what it really takes to change and what it takes to connect with somebody, what it takes to form a healthy attachment. I've said before, if I had to sum up what's going on in America culturally, that I think maybe presents as what we would say some cultural divide. It is, I could put it in 2 words: attachment disorder. We do not know how to form attachments in a healthy way. Or we kind of do, sometimes we don't. There's vagueness around it, right? It's a fundamental problem, like I was saying in the intro. There's a fundamental problem, but there's vagueness around it. We can't get specific about it, so we can apply it to our lives sometimes. Maybe if we saw a healthy portrayal of it in popular culture, in a movie or a television show, and it is out there. But we can't do it definitively. We don't know exactly what we're doing. So let's bring clarity to these 2 things: what it takes for somebody to change and what it means to connect with somebody. And this will bring clarity to what I really mean by the statement of, I consider it unethical, immoral, to purposefully make somebody feel better about themselves. So I got 3 good responses to this on Twitter, and let's just go through these 3 responses, and I'll give my replies, and through this we'll figure out what's going on when I present this unpopular opinion. Thankfully, it was an unpopular opinion that was actually unpopular, right? I mean, nothing's more annoying when you see unpopular opinion and then you see an opinion that pretty much everybody agrees with, or everybody on your side of Twitter or your side of the cultural divide agrees with. It's not that unpopular. In fact, yeah, unpopular opinion, what you think is your unpopular opinion, is actually quite popular, and the fact that you think it is unpopular indicates you to be some normie dork, to use more Twitter usages. Okay, so the first response I got to this tweet is, if this other person's self-assessment or self-esteem is lower than is rational, then it would be ethical to help them clearly see their own worth. And my response is, well, what do you mean by worth? There's 2 points here. The first one is about pain. The myth is that is often, promulgated, perpetuated by mindset bros, by cognitive behavioral therapy. They don't know that they are the slaves of cognitive behavioral therapy and what's going on in academia. It's funny, a lot of mindset guys, self-help guys, will think that they're breaking out from traditional academic psychology because there's a lot of corruption in academic psychology, and there is, and they go and just promulgate all these mindset techniques, these self-help techniques, affirmations. It's like, dude, you were just repeating the hegemony going on in academia. That's one of them, cognitive behavioral therapy. The other is critical race theory, and I think maybe next week, I don't want to make any promises, next week I'm going to do a presentation on how cognitive behavioral therapy actually leads to, how cognitive behavioral therapy causes critical race theory. There's these 2, powerhouses in modern academia, fully supported by the APA, which I think is like a good touchstone for what's going on in psychology, academia, like culture. Like what's going on in academic psychology culturally. Go look at what the APA says is good to do. And they say cognitive behavioral therapy is a therapy that works. We're not going to approve of a program unless it is at least mostly influenced by cognitive behavioral therapy, and then there's critical race theory. And on the surface, you would think these 2 things are just 2 different schools, and it just is like a hodgepodge. But I would say it's actually the cognitive behavioral therapy invariably causes critical race theory. So tune into that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay, so there's 2 things going on here. Is what do you mean by clearly see somebody's own worth? And then let's just start there. So the big myth, I think, is that you need to feel good to change. And in a way, this is true. You do need to feel good on a broad, abstract level, which doesn't necessarily mean feeling good in the short term. Right? A lot of times, in fact, every time I look back on my life, and every time I've changed drastically over a relatively short period of time, I did not feel good about myself. I was not in a good mood. But in a way, I wasn't in a good mood. And if you ask me in the moment, probably at the time, I'd say I don't feel good about myself. But overall, my perception of who I was, metaphysically as a man or a boy becoming a man, or to whatever extent I am a man now, right? There's always work to do. I felt good about that. I felt good on an abstract level of what my challenges were, what I could do to overcome them, but I was fully aware that my challenges were my challenges and nobody was going to come save me. Now, in the moment, that doesn't feel good necessarily. That isn't typically what we would ascribe as feeling good in our culture, which is mostly the absence of pain, being in a pleasant, our projection of what heaven could possibly be is, sitting on a warm, fluffy cloud and having all your needs taken care of you. From my perspective, that does not feel good. And if you have any disagreement there, I would, before you disagree with me and make a comment, I would say go watch the Twilight Zone episode. A nice place to visit. A nice place to visit. I got still getting over a head cold here. I'm going to try to mumble less than I usually do, hopefully. A little bit less. Probably still going to mumble a lot. So go check out the Twilight Zone episode, A Nice Place to Visit. And let me know what you think about our common conception of what heaven could be. So if somebody's self-assessment is lower than is rational, first of all, there's nothing you're going to say in that moment to help them. Yeah, how do you not help? So it would be ethical, according to this guy who made this response, it would be ethical to help them clearly see their own self-worth. First of all, there's nothing you could really say in the moment to help them see their own self-worth, right? That's not really where somebody's self-worth comes from. If you say, hey, you got a nice life here. Oh, I know you're upset about this thing, but maybe it's not so bad because you got all these other things going on over here. That doesn't really change somebody's self-worth. What changes somebody's self-worth is they learn how their psychology works eventually, and then they're able to engage in a process where they're able to see how much self-worth they have over time. And the other thing is, I think you need to be in acute pain to improve your life. I want to live in a world where we don't need to be in pain to improve our lives. Where we're driven by the carrot, so not so much the stick. But you know what? The stick is really helpful. And sometimes you need to feel your own pain in order to change in the way you need to change. And perhaps somebody's assessment of themselves is lower than is rational. Maybe that's true. But maybe that's also where they need to be in order for them to change. The other fallacy here is why... So you see somebody in pain, you see somebody who has a lower self-assessment than is rational. This is, I think, another indication, well, as I said in the intro, this is an indication of the attachment disorder. You think it is ethical to go in and your goal is to change somebody's perception of themselves, to let them see, even if it's the truth, that their life is better than they think it is. And I would argue that's part of the attachment disorder. That's part of, you're in there to change somebody and how they feel as opposed to connect with them. As part of connecting with them is understanding where you do this in your own life, where your own self-assessment is perhaps lower than is rational. Can you identify that and talk with them about it? You say, well, they're the one with the problem. I don't want to take the focus I don't want to bring the focus to me. Are you bringing the focus to you? Or are you keeping the focus on them while talking about yourself? As Hugo says, don't you know when I talk about myself, I ultimately talk about you. What's Hugo saying when he says this? He says everybody has the same emotional experience. So for you to go in from the outside, or really from above, from your perspective, because you know it's rational and he doesn't. And even if you're right, it doesn't matter. But you know it's rational and he doesn't. So you want to swoop in and let him see what is rational, what is real. When really what you are doing is denying the fact that you do the same thing. Of course you do. You're a human. I do this. I do that 12 times before breakfast. Yeah, and what's wrong with pain? A huge misconception about therapy, and the reason why I made this tweet in the first place is because I was in my first graduate program that I was in. I was trained in a humanistic Rogerian, from the Carl Rogers approach of unconditional positive regard. And it was all about making somebody, there is an element to that I did take out of the program that was really helpful, but there's only a piece of that that's helpful. The negative side of that is therapists now, when they're trained in that approach, and I'm not saying Carl Rogers says this explicitly, but he's not aware of what he says enough to differentiate between the healthy kind of positive regard and validation versus the unhealthy kind. The healthy kind is, yes, I validate what you're feeling, it exists, so let's manage it. The unhealthy kind, which doesn't get differentiated that well, going back to the vagueness issue, the unhealthy kind is, well, I'm here to make you feel better about yourself. I want you to feel better about yourself at the end of the session. I want you to feel better at the end than you did at the beginning. That's kind of the goal. Or people interpret that as the goal. Now, if you're a Rogerian humanistic therapist, you're going to comment on this. So, oh no, that's not the goal. That's not what anybody says. Maybe that's not what everybody says from that approach, but that sure does seem to happen a lot. When I was in training, not in this first graduate program, but another graduate program, I was working with therapists who were driving clients around town, trying to get them like nice clothes for their job interview. If that's not a codependence, lack of healthy attachment, I don't know what is. So the issue here is, you got to feel pain, and I'm totally okay with clients feeling better about themselves after a session with me, and I'm also okay with them feeling worse, feeling agitated, feeling frustrated with me. That's fine. Be angry at me. That may be healthy. At least we're not unconscious of the anger anymore. We can use that. Go out and improve your life to spite me at first. That's a stick, and it's not even a healthy stick, but whatever, we'll take it. We'll take it if it's something. We'll get you to the place where you're regulated so you can be motivated by the carrot. But right now, that's not reality. You gotta feel that great reservoir of pain and resentment, frustration, anger. You're agitated, you're slightly agitated, and maybe you're not sleeping as well. Oh well, too bad. That's great energy. That is great dopamine you're going to need. I'm guessing once you feel that agitated energy, you're not going to have, whatever your energy drink. You're going to be drinking a lot less Bang, right? So yes, of course it's good to clearly see your own worth, but this is ancillary. This is step 5. And if you just try to go in there and make somebody see their own self-worth in the moment, it's not going to work. You're not connecting with them. The only thing you can do is help them with their own awareness by talking about, by becoming more aware of yourself. That's the most you could possibly do. And you're not doing it to make them feel better about themselves. You're doing it to connect with them, because without connection, we don't even have brains. We don't even have these huge 100 billion plus neuron processors. We need a different kind of technology that we don't even understand in order to even be able to understand them in the first place. Not all neuroscience is bogus, but a lot of it is, because the technology is just not there. So that's the first response I got. Their self-assessment is lower than is rational. Good. Maybe that's where they need to be. You see how that's unethical to rob them of that great, we call it negative. There's nothing negative about it. There's no negative emotional experience. The only thing that's, quote, negative is what you do with that emotional experience. So the other response I got, we have 3 here. This is the second one. The other response I got is, hey, what's negative about noticing somebody has exceptional shoes, for instance, and you tell them that they're nice? How about it when somebody messes up or makes a mistake and you say, hey man, you'll fix it, you'll do better next time. What could possibly be the downside to this? Well, I'll tell you the downside to this is, if you think they're going to do better next time, if you really think that, then maybe that's a good thing to say. But why are you saying it? What's the intention? Is the intention because you really do think they're going to do better next time? That's what you're thinking about their situation? Or is the intention simply to make them feel better? Is the intention only to make them happier? Maybe they won't do better next time. Maybe what they need is your honest feedback in the moment. Same thing with their shoes. Why are you telling somebody that they have nice shoes? Is it really because you think they have nice shoes? Well, then that's a great thing to say. But honestly, a lot of the times, and this is like chick gab talk, I just noticed this because I was at the gym and this girl was coming out of the locker room after a workout. And, she was all changed and dressed up, I guess you could say. Very much contrast whatever workout that she did prior. And I heard some other girls say, "Oh, you look so cute." Now, I don't know. Maybe I come from a different perspective. She did not look cute. She actually looked like a total mess. You could tell she tried, but she looks like a total mess. And I could just tell in that situation that the other girl said she looked cute because she just thought it was a nice thing to say, and she actually looks terrible, but I don't, I don't want to make her feel bad. I want to make her feel good, right? That's the intention. That's indicative of the attachment disorder that we're dealing with in this thing we call Western culture. I want to make her feel good, so I'm going to say whatever I can to make her feel good. I think Amy Schumer has a funny sketch about this. I mean, mostly I find Amy Schumer kind of gross, but I think she has some funny sketches, and that's one of them. Of just girls caught up in this loop of validating, "Oh, you look so cute. No, you look cute. I look ugly. No, you look cute." Actually, I should have not have referenced Amy Schumer. I'm going to cut that part out of the video. There's a very funny Futurama bit about this when they go to the planet of the Amazonians. Tonk, you look fat. No, Tonk, you look good. I look fat, or whatever. So yeah, what's the downside of saying this? Well, there's not necessarily a downside of telling somebody that they have nice shoes, but what's the intention, right? And until we're clear about the intention, until it's an honest, pure intention of, if you really think they have nice shoes, then tell them that they have nice shoes. That's great, and that's what you feel like you need to say in the moment. But you see, the dynamic is totally changed in both situations. One person is telling another person they have nice shoes, but it's the intention, the dynamic is completely different. The person who says the other person has nice shoes in the first situation is out of touch with themselves. They're out of touch with themselves, and they just want to make the other person feel better. In the second situation, they are in touch with themselves and truly creating a connection with somebody if they do in fact have nice shoes. And I think this is the same for not just giving somebody a compliment, but same for a personal relationship or the development of a personal relationship. I think a lot of, for example, people, if you go over to somebody's house for a dinner party, a lot of people have the goal of, I just want to make everybody there happy. I'm there to make people feel better and laugh and have fun. And that can be great, but also, in a certain perspective. But if that's your main goal, then I think that's an issue. I think a healthier goal is, I'm going to go over to this house and connect with people. I am going to connect. I am going to be honest about what's going on with me, be honest about what I see going on, and communicate that in a healthy way. That's the goal. And then whatever fun comes from that, that's all gravy, right? That's ancillary. That is not the main goal, because if that's not the main goal, then you're not really at the dinner party. Some performance of you, right? Some persona of you is at the dinner party. You're not really there. And then people go home after a 3.5-hour dinner party and go, "Oh, I'm so exhausted. Being around people is so exhausting. Oh, I guess I'm just an introvert." No, you're not an introvert. You're just adapting to other people. Your goal is to get other people to like you and have fun. Your goal isn't to be yourself in a social situation. So of course it's going to be exhausting. And I see this all the time when guys say it, and women say too, is, I've been nothing but nice. This is the nice guy syndrome. We all know this. We all know that it's not just a guy being nice, right? There's an element of immorality behind it. There's an element of hiding and concealing your intentions or agenda. And people say, "Well, I've just been nothing but nice with this person. I've put their needs before my own needs, and now they disrespect me. They've walked all over my boundary." It's like, well, dude, what boundary? You never had a boundary in the first place. You're just out of touch with yourself. You don't have a self, so don't be too surprised when people don't treat you, or when people treat you like you don't have a self. So what's wrong with telling somebody they have nice shoes? Well, do you really think they have nice shoes? What about when somebody makes a mistake? Well, do you think they just made a mistake, or do you think something else is going on? Or are you just afraid? Are you just afraid to connect over that? Because we've all been in that situation where we think we're doing everything right. We think we're giving 100% or 110%, as Lou Ferrigno says. And we still mess up. And we still mess up over and over again. Maybe what you're doing, and I guess I should have said this in the first point, is trying to distract yourself, not trying to make the other person feel better about their life. Maybe what you're trying to do is you're trying to make them feel better. And that's usually you're trying to make yourself feel better, because you don't want to be reminded of the time when you've messed up 10 times something in a row and you tried really hard and then you just kind of gave up. You kind of rationalize it away like it's no big deal, or I'm fine, or I don't really need that anyways. You try to rationalize it away, or that was just a first world problem. And that's painful. And when your buddy messes up, and he's messed up 10 times in a row, maybe what you want, you're saying, hey, you'll do better next time. Maybe what you're really trying to do is distract yourself from your own pain. And I would say, in my experience, 9.5 times out of 10, that's exactly what's going on. You think you're trying to make somebody else feel better. Really what you're trying to do is distract yourself from your existential strife. And you're not going to have an identity. All the stuff I talk about here, talking through your emotions, it's not going to work for you until you can really see where you do that. And I guarantee you do that. I do that. We all do that. Welcome to this cultural stew that we call attachment disorder. And we got to face up to that and really be honest about what's going on and what our intention really is. And it's tough. It's tough because you can get really good at the whole persona show thing, and you can go over to the dinner party and make somebody feel good, and they're going to invite you out, and if they have, Warriors tickets, they're going to want you to use them, and it's going to be great, and that worked out. And then 5 years later, just like more and more existential strife, more and more depression, and you don't know what it is. Well, what it is yeah, of course, why is there an existential strife? Why do we call it existential strife? Because it's just existence that you're in. But you're not even in it because you don't have a self. Existence just takes hold of you. That really great speech at the end of Burden of Dreams by Werner Herzog. He has this really, I definitely go watch the entire documentary, but there's this really great speech at the end about, just the chaos and the not immorality, but the amorality of nature, and it just seeps in and takes over. And there's nothing beautiful about nature. That is a symbolic representation of what an existential strife is. And nature seeps in, existence seeps in, because you don't have a boundary. Because you never regulated your emotions. Because whenever you go out to a dinner party and have a chance to really make a connection with somebody, it's just a show. Or, we might have differing political opinions. I'm not going to bring that up because that's rude. No, it's only rude when you bring it up because you're uncomfortable with what you believe. If you're comfortable with what you believe, then you would bring it up in a healthy way, in a way that breeds connection, not disconnection. And we think, look, there's this thing called this cultural divide going on. No, that's the divide. The divide is in you. That's where it starts. Like when Jung says, when the Iron Curtain came down, that's symbolic of what is going on in every human soul in the West. The Iron Curtain in our psyche. So that's why you don't just say somebody has nice shoes to say they have nice shoes. The other response I got, this is going to be a little bit shorter because I think it's, but it's good to talk about, is my tweet seems to be true on the surface that people can only change when they're ready. That's kind of what I'm saying. But this doesn't apply to young children. Right? The statement of, just to reminder what I said, that it's unethical to purposely make somebody feel better about themselves. This does not apply to young children, so it can't be a universal statement. Well, true. It's not a universal statement, but it's a universal statement among adults. Look, when you go into ethics class, you don't say, you don't base it off of how you treat children, because a human ethic of how you treat children would be to do exactly what is unethical, I would argue, in the rest of your life. It's like when you're around a child, you don't really have a sense of self because they can't deal with that, right? You don't share your negative emotions. Well, it depends. We'll get into it. You don't dump that on them. If you have an issue in the moment, you don't dump that on them because they can't deal with it, right? And this is part of this is what narcissistic mothers do, is they take their adult problems and talk to their 9-year-old son about it, but their husband's away, so that they don't have a man to talk to, so they're dumping all these work problems on their 9-year-old son. And what does the 9-year-old son do? He doesn't have a sense of self, so all he can do, what he invariably naturally does, is, well, I exist to make mommy feel better about herself. And the mom can say, well, no, that's not what I want. Well, I know that's not what you want, but you don't understand what's going on. So when you talk to your son about your work problems, God forbid, your freaking dating problems, that's what ends up happening. So yeah, an ethics for being around, especially young children, I'll say younger than 4, is put their needs first, do everything that they need, do whatever you can to make them feel better in the moment. Well, that's what being a nice guy is. That's a typical nice guy. Pushover. You think you're being nice, but really you're trying to cover up for your own pain because you don't know how to communicate with anybody else. Because as we covered in the previous point, so no, this doesn't apply to children. But Nico McKeon Ethics, I would argue the greatest book on ethics ever written, doesn't apply to children. It applies to young men. That's who it was written for. It was written for Aristotle's son, Nico. That's why it's called that, Nico McKeon Ethics. Well, yeah, of course it doesn't apply to young children. But I would argue, boy, I'm a huge proponent of any kind of Montessori positive parenting. If you find a book on that, like Montessori parenting, how to create a Montessori home, positive parenting, I think that will steer 99% of parents in the right direction. But it is not being applied well. I see it. I live in a, very Swipple area, I guess you could say. You guys know what Swipple is? It's this meme from like the early stuff white people like. My favorite example is you go to a restaurant and they don't have decimal points on the menu. It's just, how much is the lobster bisque? It's 18. It's not like 1850. It's just stuff like that. I live in very much an area like that. And I see people doing the positive parenting thing of validating, constantly putting their child's needs first, in a sense, always trying to make their child feel happy and feel good about themselves, even after 4. I would say 4 is the hard cutoff point. Really, it's from 2 to 4, depending on your child, maybe depending on how neurotic they are, and maybe if they're a little bit more neurotic, I do think that is somewhat innate, maybe a little bit closer to 4, but then you have the issue of you don't want to wear the kid gloves around somebody just because they have an issue, just because they are a little bit more neurotic. So you go, oh, Matt, young Matthew, he's a little bit sensitive, so we're going to be a little bit nicer to him, and we're still going to baby him until he's 6, 7, and 8. Well, that's just going to perpetuate the problem, and aggravate the problem. I was just at the park walking around, and it was a birthday party, and this kid is probably 8 or 9 who was turning 8 or 9, and I didn't see the conflict, but one of the kids started to cry, and this was clearly an 8-year-old, 9-year-old boy. He may have been 10, and he's crying, bawling his eyes out, and what is his dad doing? The dad's sitting on a park bench, the 8, 9, possibly 10-year-old boy is straddling his father, like a baby. Like you wear the moms wear the straps or whatever, like the hammock thing that moms wrap around themselves, for an infant. That's when your wife goes to the grocery store with an infant when she's 3 months old. That's what you do. So like the face is right there on the bosom, the really safe place, which it feels really good to be there, but hopefully you don't waiting to the adult, it still really feels really good to have your face right there. And hopefully you don't use that to regulate your emotion all the time. Still feels really good though. And that's what this father was doing for his son. And I know what happened. I know this father is probably about my age, an older millennial, perhaps Gen X, and he grew up in a house where the parents were maybe more strict. Not strict so much, but, oh, you got a bad grade on the spelling test? Well, hey, don't cry about it. Guess you got to study next time. Okay, we're going to have this regimented, spelling test study time. Oh, just total disregard for the emotions. And now the pendulum I see swinging. He read a positive parenting book because he's Swipple. He read a positive parenting book, Montessori, swinging back the other way. He lacks differentiation. There's still some vagueness there in how to apply it. And he's applying it to his 8, 9, perhaps 10-year-old son. And that is totally damaging. He is old enough. He's not old enough to be an adult, but he is old enough to start regulating emotions on his own, like an adult would. Of course, you talk with your son if he's upset. You talk to them about what he's feeling, what's going on, what happened, tell me about it. But I'm not there as the father. I'm not there to make you feel better. I am there to communicate with you about what's going on. And maybe 8, 9, 10 is a little bit young to share what's going on with you and connecting. It depends on the situation, depends a little bit on the child. This is a very situation specific, but that would be way healthier. Right, you're not dumping your issue on your son, but you're talking with him about how you feel frustrated sometimes. And yeah, it's uncomfortable. I see what you're going through. But there, feel better. That is perpetuating, aggravating this infant mind. And that kid in 10, 20 years, he's going to be in a position where he's telling you what to do, and he's still going to be an infant. And you say, why is my boss such a narcissist? That's why, because he can't manage his issues on his own. So, yeah, you say this applies to young children, sure, infants and babies, but honestly, from 2 to 4, it's time for the child to start regulating on their own. You don't go in, yes, when your child's 2, and, I got a 14-month-old here. She falls, she hits her head. Obviously, she's not hurt, she's just, embarrassed. She's just embarrassed. I can't believe I'm such an idiot. I fell and I hit my head. I feel like an idiot. Very much. This just pops into my head. I guess I haven't gotten over this. I was in college, and it's winter and there's ice, and I'm walking to class or something. I'm walking by this girl who I like, which I forget. I remember who it was, but I mean, whatever. It was college. I talked with any girl for 30 seconds, and I fell in love with her. And I'm walking by this girl. I'm like, oh, hi, Stacy, whatever her name is. As I'm waving like a dork, probably. I slip on the ice, and I fall, right on my ass. And it's just, that frustration in the moment. I didn't cry, thankfully, but it's just oh, God, I'm such a retard. You have that kind of, that's what my 14-month-old's dealing with. It doesn't hurt. It's just, I'm an idiot. And so she starts to cry. So she's 14 months, so you go, yeah. I'm trying not to laugh because it's hilarious. But you're like, oh yeah, they're there. It's okay. Yeah, I know. Yeah, yeah, it's soothing, physical touch, hug, all that stuff. But when she's 5, it's yeah, I understand you're feeling pain. Yeah, it sucks, but I'm not there to make you feel better. I'm there to connect with you. Right, and I think that's what's going on here. So, yeah, look, the takeaway, the takeaway here is I think too often. I mean, there's lots of takeaways here. But the main takeaway, whatever popped in my mind when I was preparing for this video, thinking about what I was going to say is we go into a situation. Let me just say this. We go into a potentially difficult situation or a situation where we feel maybe a little anxious or a job interview. I think this is how people mess up job interviews. I'm notorious for being unemployable and notorious for not having a real job. And I think part of the reason is I thought going into a job interview, oh, I'm there to make them like me. And that's true depending on the job. But if it's not an entry-level position, it's, you're not there to make the other person like you. You're there to connect. And I think we go in with this, if a first date, maybe that's a better example. First date, I just want to make the other person like me, so I have the most power in that situation, so I can decide what I want to do for the second date, decide whether I want to sleep with this girl, so I just want her to like me. So I'm going to just put in this performance to get her to like me. And you've lost. You've totally lost. That can work, but even when it works, you still lost. I had that other tweet this week. Play stupid games, power. go after power in a relationship. That's a stupid game. You get stupid prizes. Codependence. Even if you have power, quote unquote, in a relationship, it's inevitably a codependent relationship, and that's just going to suck the life out of you. And you're going to think, well, maybe I'm just meant to be single. Right? Or just like the person who comes back from the dinner party all tired. Oh, maybe I'm just an introvert, and being around people, it's exhausting. No, it's exhausting when you're doing the Burden of Dreams, Werner Herzog speech at the end of that movie. The goal is to connect. The goal, how can you connect with other people? Your experiences, your situations are different, but the emotions that you go through are exactly the same. To quote Hugo again, because it's that important. Don't you know, when I talk about myself, I ultimately talk about you. He means you all. Second person plural. Everybody who reads my book, I'm talking about you because we are all the same. Right? And I would argue this does make people feel better. This does, of course, make people feel better. Maybe not short term. Can lead to conflict short term, and people won't like you when you do this. Let's make no mistake about that. But long term, it is the only option. Now, how do you talk through emotions? Right? That's something that we can help you with here. We do free consultations if you want to find out more about what we do. There's a structure of how emotions work. Because emotions have a certain structure, we talk through them in a certain way. And because emotions have a predictable response, especially dysregulated emotions, we can nail down your fundamental emotional issue and make it very specific. So I want to get you to the place where, maybe not every issue in your life is handled. That may take a long time, but I can at least get you to the place where you know exactly what your issue is. It is clear about what's going on. And when it comes up in your life, you feel it. Like, oh, here it is right now. This is my issue. 80-20 rule. This is, 20% of, the issue that causes 80% of the problem. Whatever it is. It's more like 99-1 rule. This is it. This is everything. I'm just going to focus on this. Bring as much awareness to this. Animus, we have all these tools. We have more tools than you ever need to. So we have the issue to bring awareness to it. Dig it up, so to speak. Just pour these tools on, and you become more aware, and then the issue takes care of itself. So yeah, free consultations, animusempire.com/schedule. Thank you guys. And remember that it's not whether you feel good or whether you feel bad. It's how well you can relate with your unconscious.